Abortion happens every day. Millions of people around the world will have an abortion each year, but the majority of those people will never talk about their abortion experiences. What if millions of people broke their silence and told the truth about their lives and their choices? This is Melissa Madera in Granville, Ohio, and you're listening to the Abortion Diary podcast. These are the stories we share.
I had my abortion in April 2005, and at the time I was in a relationship that had started when I was 23. So we had been together for 2 years at that point. And I missed my period, and I was just pretty regular. So I thought, there's a chance that I'm pregnant. We were practicing like safe sex in the sense that we use condoms and like the pull-out method, but there was one time, and like I basically, when I kind of feel like I knew like the minute it happened, like that I was pregnant, but I just kind of like put it out of my head. And so then when I missed my period, I went to get the pregnancy test, and the guy that I was dating at the time like went with me, and so he was with me when I took the pregnancy test, and it was positive, and I was just completely hysterical, like just sobbing. And I just remember like being on the floor in my bathroom, and just like I just crumpled to the floor, and he was just like basically like, are you like crying tears of joy? I'm like, these are not happy tears. I am not happy about this. And it was like a pretty toxic relationship. I mean, it was a young, like filled with passion, and just at the time I thought it was the most true love, because we were just so passionate about things, like fighting and arguing and breaking up and getting back together. And like in my later life, I have realized that just was not a healthy relationship. But I knew it subconsciously at the time, and I knew that there was no way that I could raise a baby with this person. There was no way. So the other thing that was a factor was I was in my last semester of law school, and I was like already studying to take the California bar exam. So I was studying all the time. I was still going to classes, and the thought of being like pregnant or like having a baby in the midst of all of that was just too much. So I took the test, and then I just was like so conflicted. I just had, I was just really emotional, and I didn't know what to do. So I found this place that they said that it was like a counseling center. They said they counseled women that were pregnant. And so I called them, and I made an appointment, and I went in there, and they just immediately took me back to a room that had an ultrasound machine. And I was so confused. I was just thinking like, what is happening? They haven't even talked to me about anything, and now I'm having an ultrasound done. So I'm like laying on the table, and I had just missed my period. So I know it was very, very early along in this process. And they like did the ultrasound, and they like showed me on the screen, the pregnancy, and they were talking about a heartbeat, and I was just sobbing. I mean, I was just it was gut wrenching. It was one of the most awful experiences of my life. So they take me from that room to the counseling room, where basically they're just saying, you should have this baby, you should bring it to full term, and you should give it up for adoption. And they said, because the guy I was dating at the time was a chiropractor, so they said, this baby basically is like highly desirable because you're a lawyer, and this guy is really educated, and basically like so many people will want this baby. And I was just thinking, I cannot bring a child, like I cannot have a full-term pregnancy and give a child up for adoption. Like that is not happening. And again, I was just hysterical. I was just sobbing, and it was just awful. So I left there, and that's really, I think that night I went home and I just like, you know, just tried to like get right with myself. Like, what is happening? What do I want to do about this? Knowing that I could not have this baby. So it was basically like, I'm going to have an abortion. And I knew it, but it was just still this very raw and horrible thing to contemplate. So in that moment, I guess like I'm spiritual in the sense that I believe that, our souls come from, some place, and, I believe that like our souls like choose the life that we're going to have on earth. Like we choose the people that, are going to be our family, and like this happens. So, and this is all just my like personal belief system. So anyway, I wrote this letter, which I will read now. And this letter has made it with me in multiple moves across the country. It's just like I hung on to this. So the letter says, "Dear soul, I am writing this letter to apologize for what I'm about to do and ask for your forgiveness. I feel like I owe you an explanation, and I want you to know that I love you and I want you, but I am not prepared to give you the life that I know that you deserve. First of all, I want to apologize for not taking the necessary precautions to ensure that I would not become pregnant. This was thoughtless and immature, and I am sorry that you have suffered as a result. Second, I am sorry that I am not physically, mentally, emotionally, or financially prepared to have you in my life yet. If I had you now, we would struggle, and I would not be able to provide for you the way that I want to. If you come back in a few years, I promise I will be ready to be the mother that you deserve. I don't feel that at 25 years old I am ready for the responsibility of raising you. Right now, I am still depending on my mother to help me out because I can't financially support myself yet. I know that in a few years from now, I will be able to support you because I am going to do everything in my power to make that happen. I just want you to know that I love you and I'm honored that you picked me, and I hope that you will want to come back to me when I am ready. Please accept my apology and grant me forgiveness. I am doing this because I think that right now it is the right thing to do. I am sorry and I love you." So for me, that was really therapeutic to write that. It just really helped me like process this and feel a little bit less terrible about the decision that I had made. And I should say, my dad is extremely, extremely pro-life. And it's really interesting because he is he's a, pronounced atheist. And he was raised in the Catholic Church though, like every day, with church. And I think that just like stuck with him. So he's always been very outspoken about being pro-life. And so I think I had a tremendous sense of guilt because I just felt like, I would never be able to tell him. I just would never be able to talk about this experience. So I've always had a really good support system of like girlfriends. And at the time, I was living with one of my best friends, and I told that circle of people, and I told my brother about my decision, and some of my cousins I had talked to, one who had an abortion and one who had a baby, and just trying to get that perspective and, make my decision, even though it was pretty much made. So I found a clinic in Newport Beach, and because the guy that I was dating at the time, he was very successful and he had money, so he did pay for it. And I was lucky in the sense that, it was a nice facility and it was really like in a nice place. And so I made the appointment. I don't actually remember the timeline. Like I have no, like my recollection of like I don't even actually remember. It's funny, like calling to make the appointment. Like I have no like memory of that. And so I went in, and again, I don't know how much time had lapsed between making the phone call and actually going in for the appointment. But the day that I was doing it, the guy that I was dating took me there, and I just know that as soon as I walked in the doors, I was hysterical again, just sobbing. And I was just so awful. And I I know there was other people in the waiting room when I arrived, but I don't remember like any of them. I just was sitting there like bawling. And this man that I was dating, he was just sitting there like not knowing what to do. And so they brought me back and they ran, the tests that they need to before they do the procedure. And I wasn't given any options. I mean, it was just like, you're going to be under anesthesia and you'll have, the surgical procedure to have it, like, have the pregnancy terminated. But I don't remember talking to them about, like, whether or not, like, where I was at, like, where my head was at, because I was just so hysterical. And so then they took me into the operating room, and like the last thing I remember is just like this really, really bright light, and then I was out. And then I woke up in the recovery area, which was the most bizarre and kind of traumatic part of the experience, because they like wheeled us all out into like on beds. Like I woke up in this room, like we're just like this wall like of women. We're all just like laying in these beds. And I was like, what is happening here? And so I'm still kind of out of it from the anesthesia. And I start talking to the girl in the bed next to me. And she had 3 abortions. And I just remember thinking, I have no idea how you could go through something like this more than once. I mean, it was so traumatic for me. And I kind of like was judging her in a way, but like, and now that I think I feel terrible for even like having a thought of judgment, because this option needs to be available and she obviously needed to do it. And she was a bartender and she was trying to go back to school, and she just needed to have an abortion. And it was just so weird though. I'm like forced in this very intimate, setting with people I don't know that have just had the same procedure done, and it was just so bizarre. And so then I don't know how long I was laying there, and then eventually I got up and they just like I don't even remember getting dressed or anything. And I just remember like getting like exited out of a back door, and the guy that I was dating was already like waiting in the car, and I got in the car and he just dropped me off at my apartment and he went to work. And I got in and I called one of my best friends, and she came and she took me to lunch. And so I felt like just grateful that I had, that support. And, like after the procedure was done, I didn't like spend a lot of time, I guess, thinking about it. I mean, I always knew that it was like the right thing to do. I mean, I didn't have any like regrets in the sense that like, I just was not in the position to have a baby. So I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my dad or my stepmom, and it was hard because like we would have we often have political conversations when we're all together, and so like things like that would come up, and my dad would state his opinion about being pro-life, and every time it came up I just felt like this renewed kind of sense of shame in a way, like, but also anger too, because I'm like, I needed this, and I've always been an outspoken advocate for being pro-choice, and I will argue with anyone. It's a necessary option, and women need to have this choice. And so we would always like debate about it, but I always wanted to be like, and I had an abortion, and how does that change your opinion? But I never could do it. I just couldn't do it. So in March of 2015, I started a website with my partner, best friend Katie, that's dedicated to telling women's stories. And I was still carrying around this secret, I'm like running this website that's encouraging women to share these things that we carry in shame and fear, because by unburdening yourself you become free. So I'm telling all these people to do this thing that I couldn't do. And so finally, one of the first contributors wrote about her abortion, and she had never told anyone. And she's like, I'm doing this because I need to talk to my family about it. And she's like, I won't publish it until I've done that, until I've had that conversation. So like her doing that, and then like like talking to her family and that whole experience, like she totally like motivated me. I'm like, I've got to do this. Like I've got to own this and I've got to tell my family, and I just don't want to carry this around anymore. So I wrote my story for the website, and then I went to, my dad and my stepmother's house, and I told them, I've got to tell you this story. I'm getting ready to publish it, and, I've had an abortion. And, I just remember my stepmom just started crying, and she was just like, she's like, I feel so bad that you went through that on your own, like that you were alone and that you felt like you couldn't share this with us. And so that was like really like, we were both like crying, and it was just really special. And my dad, he was as supportive, I think, as he could be. I mean, he basically just said, I've never expected my children to have my belief system. Like it's you make your decisions for you. And I want you to know that that's, I'm not like, he wasn't like, I guess, judging me or, judging my decision. And then he did say something really sweet. He's like, and he was always raised my brother and I with this belief, like you can't know what you would do in another person's like shoes because you can't actually walk in their shoes. So, always basically just try to be kind and like understand where people are coming from. And he was just like, I'm not a woman. I don't know what I would do if I was in that position. And, I might make that same choice. So that was also really gratifying. And I have a daughter now. She's 2, and she's like amazing and beautiful and everything I wanted. And I'm able to be the mother to her that I want to be. And it's a beautiful experience, but it's right at this time in my life, and it wasn't right then. So that's my story.
Thank you. So there have been like multiple times and ways in which you've shared this story or have come out to people or have felt like you could talk to someone about it, and like the most probably difficult experience was telling your father and your stepmother. So how have you felt since then after sharing your story, and how has like your feelings or your experience been shaped by the fact that you have been able to come out to people and tell that story to people?
I mean, I find it's very empowering. I mean, I think because I do think the process of like coming out about something that you've carried in shame and fear is just, it makes you feel so much less heavy. It just is, very therapeutic to me. I think the most surprising thing, so when I first shared the story in writing, I posted it on my Facebook page, and it was the most like anyone has ever commented or shared a post of mine ever. I mean, like, and every single person commenting was just like, thank you for sharing this story. Thank you for being the voice for those who can't share the story, who aren't ready yet. And, I just felt like that was really great. I didn't have anything other than support for that decision.
I guess the other thing that you mentioned, like how traumatic the experience was for you, can you talk about that? Like pinpoint, like what about it was give you the feeling of trauma or traumatizing for you? What would have made it less so?
I don't think that anything could have made it less so, because, it was, again, because of how I was raised. I mean, I had this belief system that you didn't have abortions. Like, that was how I was, although I was always very much, even before I had my abortion, like, I'm very pro-choice myself, but I think I just had this deep, deeply ingrained, message that this was like a terrible thing to do. So that caused me to be so traumatized. And then I think too that the other difficult part was that I was 25 and I wasn't a teenager, and I was so disappointed in myself. I mean, that was really part of it too. It was just, you know, I knew, because I feel like, again, like I knew when it happened, and I could have got the morning after pill, and I didn't do that. And so it was like I made these series of mistakes, and then this was the outcome. And so I was, you know, just really disappointed in myself. And, you know, again, I think because I believe in some sort of like, I believe in this, like, in spirituality, about, you know, that these souls choose us, and so all of that was kind of wrapped up in it, because I just thought, you know, I wanted forgiveness, you know, forgiveness for all of these things that I felt like I had done wrong. And forgiveness has to come from within. I had to forgive myself, and that was, you know, a longer process. So I don't think I don't think anything could have lessened the emotional, you know, impact that it had on me. And, you know, I don't know that I fully, like, healed from it until I had my daughter, because I think I, like many women, had this, like, in the back of my head, because I had an abortion, maybe I'll never be able to get pregnant again. But I mean, I think we all kind of have that thought. And so when I was able to get pregnant, like, really, I mean, it happened really quickly. And so I just thought, you know, like, that was sort of like forgiveness in a way. Like, you know, you can have children, and at the right time, and, you know, so yeah, so I think it kind of, like, that really was helpful.
Why do you want to share your story?
Okay. Yeah, I was really excited to find your podcast, because when I published my story on my website, Speak Your Story, I had gone looking for organizations that were supporting women's choices, and, you know, trying to get the word out more about, like, this story, and just how all these stories are so important. So I found your website, and I was just immediately like, I'm, you know, I have to share this story. And for me, it's personal and political. I cannot imagine a future where my daughter does not have that choice. And I won't, like, I mean, I kind of joke. I'm like, if we ever were living in a world while I'm alive that abortion was no longer an option, like, I will be running that, like, underground clinic, and that's going to be me, because it's vital. It has to be an option. And I think that, like, this project, and by, you know, encouraging more and more women to come out about their abortion, like, we're not arguing things in a silo anymore. It's not like this, you know, to me, it's like this political debate is happening, like, without this personal element to it. And I feel like it definitely changes the conversation when you start talking to women that have had abortions, and likely, you know, somebody that's had an abortion. And my question, you know, for people that are outspokenly pro-life, would your opinion change if, you know, your daughter or your mother or your friend came out and said, I've had an abortion? So that's why I wanted to share my story. I guess, I mean, you know, the only other thing is just a call out to all women who've gone through this experience, that, you know, it is so critical to have your voice heard. And I think it's really scary, but once you are able to overcome that fear and share your experience, it's I mean, it's just so healing. I mean, it's just so healing to be able to just say, because I mean, not everyone carries it around in shame. Like, it's not, you know, depending on how you're raised and your belief system, it's, you know, some people just have an abortion and it doesn't have that deep of an impact. But if you are a person that it did impact you deeply, to have this space to share and to talk about it it's just really, it's necessary, and it's, like I said, it's healing and it's empowering. So I wish more people would share their stories.
Well, how do you feel now that you've shared your story in this way?
I feel good. I mean, I knew I wouldn't be, because I have been kind of working through this process for a while now. I didn't think I would be like highly emotional because I've talked about it, but I did get more emotional, I think, just talking about like how my stepmom reacted, because that was really, impactful. So I wasn't really expecting that. But yeah, I mean, it feels good.
As always, for more information about the Abortion Diary podcast, visit us on the web at theabortiondiary.com or email me with your questions or comments. If you would like to share your story, send me an email at melissa@theabortiondiary.com or visit our website, click on Share Your Abortion Story, and fill out our contact form. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to help us reach more folks, please subscribe on iTunes and write a review or rate this podcast. Your reviews and ratings will help us grow in the iTunes rankings and reach more people. I would also love to hear from you. You can also follow The Abortion Diary on Twitter or Facebook. And The Abortion Diary can't continue without your support. Support The Abortion Diary by making a tax-deductible donation to us on Fractured Atlas, or buying some of our wristbands or totes on Store Envy. And a special thanks to you for listening. I'll be back next week with a new story.